early one summer morning in the small village of Whitehorse in the Canadian province of Yukon. The silence was broken by an alarming call to the local animal rescue center. A resident living near the cold and deep Kluane Lake reported that a red fox was floundering in the center of the lake, seemingly about to drown. Lucas, an experienced lifeguard with a kind heart, without thinking, put on a life jacket, grabbed a net, and rushed to a motorboat moored at the dock. Kluane Lake sparkled in the morning sun, but the light waves and glare on the water made it difficult to see. Lucas peered carefully into the water until he finally noticed a small red speck weakly struggling in the cold water. The fox looked exhausted. Its paws were desperately beating, but its strength was leaving it, and its head was increasingly lowered by the blows of the waves. Lucas carefully brought the boat closer, carefully scooped the fox up with the net and pulled it out of the icy water. Wet red fur was running down his hands, and panic and fear were visible in the animal's eyes, but it was too weak to resist. Lucas pressed the fox to his chest, trying to warm it with his warmth. His even breathing helped to calm it down, and the trembling gradually subsided. The boat turned towards the shore, carrying on board a saved life that had just escaped death. At the animal rescue center, Lucas quickly wrapped the fox in a warm woolen blanket. The vet examined her and confirmed that she was suffering from hypothermia and severe exhaustion, but that her life was not in danger. The team named the fox Spark, after the light she brought to their day. At first, Spark was wary. She sat huddled in the corner of the cage, her eyes watching every movement around her. Lucas spent time patiently with her, talking quietly to her so that she could get used to his voice. He brought her cooked meat and left it nearby so that Spark could come and eat without feeling threatened. On the fourth day, she finally timidly reached for the food, even with Lucas sitting next to her. After a week, Spark began to carefully move around the care room, her fur dry and her eyes brighter. Lucas felt a special connection with Spark. One evening, while he was reading in his room, she came closer and lightly touched his hand with her nose before returning to her hiding place. This small gesture of trust made him realize that she saw him as a safe place. A month later, Lucas decided to take Spark home with him so that he could better care for her. His cozy wooden house stood on the edge of the Whitehorse forest, surrounded by tall pine trees and a babbling brook. He prepared a warm spot for Spark by the large window, where the morning sun flooded the room with light. Spark quickly settled into her new home. She loved to lie on a sunny spot, watching the forest outside the window. Lucas began to take her on short walks along the edge of the forest, allowing her to feel the freedom of nature. Spark learned to respond to his call and often turned around when she heard his footsteps. He put a soft leather collar on her with a small tag engraved with her name, as if giving her her own personal badge of honor. At night, when Lucas read by the fire, Spark would curl up at his feet, her breathing even and calm. One day, when Lucas fell ill and stayed in bed, Spark never left his side. Her watchful eyes followed his every move, as if she wanted to make sure he was okay. Their bond grew, becoming deeper, but Lucas knew that the wild was Spark's true home. When spring blossomed with bright colors, he knew it was time to let her go. One warm spring day, Lucas led Spark deep into the forest, where there was plenty of game and safe places. He took off her collar, his hands shaking as he stroked her thick fur. Spark stood still for a moment, her eyes glittering in the soft sunlight. She didn't leave right away, but looked at Lucas for a long time, as if memorizing his face. Then she turned her head slightly, and quietly disappeared into the green thicket. Lucas stood, listening to the rustle of the wind that mingled with the beating of his heart. There was emptiness inside him, but he believed that Spark would live freely and happily. Winter came harshly in Whitehorse. Snow covered everything around with a white blanket. One cold night, when Lucas lit the fireplace, he heard a quiet scraping sound at the door. At first he thought it was the wind, but the sound was repeated, persistent and even. Opening the door, he froze. Iskra stood on the threshold, her fur glistening under the snow, and her eyes shining with familiar warmth. Behind her stood 3 little foxes, trembling, but bravely holding close to their mother. Spark stepped onto the porch, shaking off the snow, and looked at Lucas with absolute trust. The cubs, seeing their mother's calm, also approached. This moment filled Lucas's heart with warmth, like a winter miracle. He turned the corner of the garage into a warm shelter for the Fox family, laying down blankets, putting out a bowl of clean water, and cooking fresh meat every day. At first, the cubs only ate in his absence, their eyes full of caution. But over time, they began to imitate their mother, trusting Lucas. At night, the cubs sometimes climbed onto the bed, curling up at Lucas's feet, their warm breath filling the house with coziness. He named them Flame, Shadow, and Star, names inspired by winter nature. The house was filled with the patter of little paws, creating an atmosphere of joy. Lucas kept a diary, recording every moment and taking pictures of them, calling the cubs children of the snow. He contacted a conservationist at Kluane National Park to prepare the family for their return to the wild. But he was in no hurry during the winter. This winter belonged to their life together. Spark often stood at the window, looking out at the snow-covered forest, and Lucas, with his hand on her back, felt their silent connection. When the snow began to melt and spring returned, Lucas led Spark and her cubs into the forest. He watched them run forward joyfully, his heart full of trust. Spark turned around one last time, her eyes full of gratitude. Their silhouettes slowly disappeared into the green thicket. Since then, every winter Lucas leaves the door of his house slightly ajar, hoping for another reunion with Spark and her family. Thank you for listening to this story. If you liked it, don't forget to support our channel, like and subscribe so you don't miss new stories about wildlife.